There's a vacuum, honestly, between now and the G20 meeting. I think we're skeptical that you're going to get a big breakthrough at that meeting. I think at the very best, maybe you get a temporary truce, maybe you get a stalemate, maybe a commitment to negotiate more.
But what do you think the markets have priced in right now?
I think the markets honestly are extrapolating from the pivot from Mexico. I think that they are sort of cautiously optimistic that we may see that type of pivot at the G20 meeting. I think I'm interested to hear what the senator has to say about this, but I think the dynamics facing China are very different from Mexico, right? Mexico is a very strategic ally. They're our biggest trading partner. Supply chains are very enmeshed. And there was very much bipartisan disagreement, opposition to the Mexico tariffs. You know, you compare that to China. China's very different. Lots of bipartisan support to really rectify and sort of reset this relationship with China.
And to be tough on them, Senator. So what do you think the expectation should be going into this G20 meeting? It all seems to have to do with, is there going to be an in-person meeting, and what form is it going to take, and what's going to be discussed?
I think what you're going to hear is a lot about relationship. We get along, we like each other, he wants to do a deal, blah, 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 and that'll provide some optimism for the markets, but I don't think there's going to be anything of substance that comes out of the G20.
You know, an interesting wrinkle, and it's more than a wrinkle, but in terms of these talks, is what's happening in Hong Kong this week.
Yep.
So all of the focus is now going to be on Beijing's response to this. Do they try to quell the protests further than the tear gas and rubber bullets we saw today? And with the world's attention on them in a couple of weeks, it's just the pressure feels like it's more on than ever. Does that complicate the ability of any kind of broader deal making here because it's a distraction to the Chinese leadership?
No, I think actually this administration has been very willing to ignore what previous administrations might have seen as human rights violations or limitations on protest, where you would say, okay, if you don't cut this out, we're not going to talk to you. That's not what this administration is. If you want proof of that, look at Saudi Arabia. And so what we're seeing now is a lack of willingness, I think, on both sides. They're both still testing. I mean, the president sees political advantage to being tough on China. China sees political advantage. The president sees political advantage on being tough on Trump, blaming Trump. And so I think the more that narrative plays out in both countries, the more difficult it's going to be to get a deal.